Brad Marchand spoke with the South Florida media yesterday, and Aaron Ekblad has been suspended. How did the Panthers navigate the rest of the regular season? We'll discuss this and more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, March 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at @LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And if you're on the YouTube channel, make sure to press that like button down below and subscribe so you know every time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your feed. Today on the show, we are going to discuss everything from Saturday's win over the Buffalo Sabres for the Panthers to finish off their homestand. We're going to discuss Aaron Ekblad's suspension that was handed down by the NHL on Tuesday. And also, Brad Marchand spoke to the media in time for the Panthers to start their 6-game road trip tonight in Boston at the TD Garden. But I do want to give a little bit of housekeeping for you guys and discuss everything that is going on off the podcast for myself, as I am out of state due to the death of my grandmother. So unfortunately, there won't be 5 shows this week as we put her to rest yesterday here in Puerto Rico. And I have traveled out of state and will be back at my home base later on, but I don't guarantee that there will be 5 podcasts this week. So just asking you guys to be a little bit patient with me. If you aren't on the socials, this is the first time that you're hearing about the news. But to all the people that who have sent your condolences, thoughts, and prayers, I do want to say thank you for that. So very appreciative of all the kind messages from each and every one of you. But let's discuss everything with the Panthers and their win over the Buffalo Sabres, a 4-0 shutout against them. So 3 out of the last 4 games for the Florida Panthers getting shutouts and the Panthers just not trailing since the first game out of the 4 nations. The Panthers are almost at 3 weeks of not trailing in a game for them. So just the incredible run that the Panthers are on, 19 straight PKs that they have completed for them without giving up a power play goal against. On Saturday, Nico, Sturm, and Vitek Vancek made their Panthers debuts, and Nico Sturm looked great on the penalty kill, being paired with Eetu Luostarinen. Lundell is now with Jesper Boquist. So each and every pair for the Panthers, for the forwards, as far as the PK, you'll have a guy who can take the faceoffs in the D zone, battle it out along the walls, and even with Nico Sturm being part of the mix for the Panthers, 7 of 10 on faceoffs for them, and 2 grade A opportunities for him as well on UPL, who did a great job of taking away the opportunities for Nico Sturm there. And also Vitek Vancek with all the Vanny chats as well. We saw how South Florida embraced the Bobby chants whenever he made a spectacular save. The South Florida fans on Saturday knew the assignment whenever it came to new Panther coming into the mix, even though the Panthers did see Vitek Vancek in the playoffs just a few years ago, right before being pulled after 40 minutes in Game 2. When the Florida Panthers did defeat the Washington Capitals in 6 games. But again, this Panthers team, they're on a roll. Going back to Vitek Vancek stopping on a breakaway after the Panthers took the lead, and then after it was 2-0, Zach Benson got a good amount of sauce and barely and got it to Ryan McLeod, where Vitek Vancek already had the pads down and was able to just move crisply left to right to get the save there for him. And just once again for the Panthers, it's another example of the team clicking. 2-0. Sam Reinhart saying don't put a snow shower on my goalie when it came to Malenstein getting in front and stopping there, and then Gustav Forsling in the middle of that game on a key block right before the end of the second had a hard time getting off the ice and was still able to get off and not miss any time going into the third period for him. Nate Schmidt, his first 2-point game in over 2 years, getting activated on the offense, and multiple times for the Sabres in this game. It was UPL having to trying to bail out his defense when coverage, they weren't collapsing around the net well, and very spread out, having to come out of his crease to make a save, and then the puck would trickle, and then there was multiple times where a Panther was right behind UPL to just knock it into the net for them. So it was just a pure example of the Panthers winning a whole bunch of their battles as well. After the second period, they showed the stat of the Panthers and how they were able to win their puck battles. It was over 3/4 of the puck battle wins for the Panthers in through 40 minutes against the Buffalo Sabres, and just a pure example of just a team that's just once again getting playoff ready for them, because the playoffs for the Panthers have already started. I mean, we saw the Panthers kind of struggle a little bit at home, and now after 5 games of the homestand, winning all of them in very convincing fashion for them. It's just for them. It's right now they know that it's a position that they are trying to put themselves in order to just create the separation, especially because the Toronto Maple Leafs last night they were up 3-0 against the Utah Hockey Club and ended up winning in a shootout. And that helps the Florida Panthers once again in the regulation wins. When it comes to that, they have 3 more regulation wins than the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Panthers once again going. There was a 2-on-1 that the Sabres had, and the Panthers had 3 guys already there back, and to end the 2-on-1 and not even give themselves an opportunity for a shot on goal. And then the 6-on-5, even when the Panthers were up 3-0, just the amount of sticks in the lanes for them that just did not allow really much for Buffalo. And really, it was just a matter of 2 teams going in different directions for Buffalo, and them still trying to figure things out, while the Panthers just wanting to. And here's the thing for Florida, and the 2 guys that we mentioned at the top of the segment, in Nico Sturm and Vitek, 2 guys Nico Sturm has won a Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche, but 2 guys who have dealt with a lot of losing over the last year for them, and that they feel refreshed, rejuvenated, going into a different situation. Vitek Vancek, even though he's not going to be the starter for the Panthers in the playoffs, it's an opportunity to just still, for him, just to feel a little rejuvenated for him, and just to help himself. And the fact that he has a structure around him that's going to help get pucks out of the crease, and that they are going to go to the walls and battle, it makes his job a lot easier than Nico Sturm already, with how much he wins off the draw. That when he steps into the dot, that he knows that he has a chance, that his teammates are going to give him a chance to get to the pucks faster and clear the zone for them. So that in itself is a definite confidence boost for those 2 when it comes to just them coming into a new situation and just getting a breath of fresh air for both of them here. So again, the Panthers are just continuing to roll as they've ended the homestand strong note, and really with everything that the Panthers have done throughout this, their average numbers are going up. Now the Panthers PK who has struggled at times throughout the season, they're now up to in the 11th in kill rate in the NHL. So that's what a big run can do, when the Panthers were mostly in the middle of the pack. And we saw how that was a big part of how the Panthers eventually won the Stanley Cup last year, especially with how they did it on the road, which, hey, this road trip is going to be huge for them and how they manage that side of the puck. But in segment number 2, we are going to discuss the unfortunate news that we found out on Tuesday on Aaron Ekblad getting suspended by the NHL. We are going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meal to fit your lifestyle. Whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, Plus Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day. And I love how Factors takes the stress out of eating. I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavors that kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, and great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started with it at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off and get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOn50NHL50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Segment number 2 here on this Tuesday, March 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. And the NHL and the NHLPA have announced that the Panthers defenseman Aaron Ekblad has been suspended 20 games for violating the league's performance-enhancing program. And the Aaron Ekblad has released the following statement, quote, "As the NHL announced, I have been suspended for violating the NHL/NHLPA performance-enhancing substances program. The news that I had failed a random drug test was a shock. Ultimately, I made a mistake taking something to help me recover from recent injuries without first checking with proper medical and team personnel. I let my teammates, the Panthers organization, and our great fans down. For that, I am truly sorry and have accepted responsibility for my mistake and will be fully prepared to return to my team when my suspension is over. I have learned a hard lesson and cannot wait to get back with my teammates." Close quote. So, Aaron Ekblad releases that statement and discusses that he took the substance that he took while he was hurt, and just looking back at the timeline when he missed a little bit of time from January 9th to January 24th. The Panthers did go 3-3-1 throughout that span. PK was not really great during that, as it was 63%, and also Aaron Ekblad had the 4 Nations break to recover from everything that his body had been through. So we spoke about it at the time, how that was for the Panthers the key to who needed the rest the most for them. Aaron Ekblad and 2 goaltenders at the time. We were talking about Spencer Knight and Sergei Bobrovsky, but hey, the Florida Panthers backup goaltender that they have now, Vitek Vancek, even if he was playing to a high level, he wouldn't have been in 4 Nations because Czechia was not part of the 4 Nations. As I didn't even mention Vitek Vancek, first Panther to get a shutout in his NHL debut since Chris Striegler, and even before that, Jose Theodore. So the 3rd in franchise history for the Panthers. So going back to Aaron Ekblad's suspension, 20 games, which will have him miss the rest of the regular season, plus the first 2 playoff games for the Panthers. And this is huge for the star defenseman for the Panthers here, and how when you trade for a right-handed shot in Seth Jones at the trade deadline, you're creating not only insurance but creating more balance in the lineup. And now that they're not going to have that for the next 20 games, it's going to be interesting to see how Seth Jones meshes with Nico Mikkola when Aaron Ekblad does return. So this is assuming that Seth Jones is going to be upgraded to the top pair with Gustav Forsling. I'm going to assume that he's going to be the guy on the top power play unit for the team as well. So it's going to be an opportunity to see how the Panthers power play clicks throughout these next 18 games, and even the 2 left in the regular season. So, and again, there's no Matthew Tkachuk for the Panthers, so you're missing 2 guys in the mix for the Panthers. Thankfully, they have brought guys in, Brad Marchand, who we're gonna discuss in a little bit. So that's another thing for the Panthers as far as their forward group. Aaron Ekblad, while suspended, his money on the salary cap will remain on the books for the Panthers. And the trade deadline has passed. So anyone who gets traded to the Panthers after the deadline will be ineligible for the postseason. So there's no point in trying to make a trade even now for the team. So that's a little bit of a rough spot that Aaron Ekblad has put himself in with the team here. And again, this could have been avoided with simply consulting with team personnel and the league. And at the same time, there's also a laundry list of things for what is a proper thing to take and what isn't a proper thing to take, that they could all be just mixed up and confused when it comes to how a player is trying to recover from an injury as well. And the thing is, I'm not necessarily for things that enhance performance, but I'm for medication that is going to help a player recover. But again, the leagues and know the science better behind it. So if that truly is a substance that they have done their research and that they think is going to help create a competitive advantage for their players, then okay, we gotta accept what the suspension is for them. But again, that's not to say that Aaron Ekblad shouldn't be held accountable. He absolutely should be. So that's another thing for that. But again, it's Nikola and Dmitry Kulikov are expected to be a pair again for the Panthers. Uvis Bilinskas is likely going to draw into the lineup along with Nate Schmidt. So that is going to be a little bit of there's a little bit of familiarity there, but I just wonder how it's going to be with, once again, Dmitry Kulikov getting more of the minutes in which he has gotten used to this season, but it's also going to be what's it going to be like when he returns. I assume that it's just going to be immediately back to him being paired with Gustav Forsling, and then Seth Jones getting time with Nico Mikkola, which is the other thing. With Seth Jones being more of the offensive ceiling versus Nico Mikkola, and when you have Nico Mikkola paired with Kulikov, Mikkola is more of the guy who could get activated in the offense for him. So is that going to be a little bit of a tough time for the Panthers and how they communicate when the postseason does come around? That's something that I'm going to be a little bit concerned about here for the team, and that's really when it comes to just balance of the lineup for the Panthers here. So, and honestly, it puts even more emphasis on why the Panthers need, let me say it again, need to win the division this year, because Tampa Bay's loaded up. Toronto's actually a threat, and I think their play style for them this season with Craig Berube in the mix, although they do have a little bit of questions on what's going to happen with the future of Mitch Marner and John Tavares, but that's also they're also a threat. And if you have Toronto and Tampa Bay battling it out against each other and having that series extended all the way to a seventh game, while the Panthers take on possibly a Columbus Blue Jackets or Ottawa Senators, nothing against them, but they don't have the experience that the Florida Panthers do. I would give the Panthers a much better shot in coming out of the first round over if you're in the 2-3, because honestly, those are toss-ups. Although I will give the Panthers the advantage in winning if they were to fall into 2-3, this makes even winning the division this year even more crucial for them, so that they could at least get some of their mistakes out of the way, and also the fact that you could have some time with that the Nico Mikkola and Seth Jones pair. I'm not worried about Aaron Ekblad and Gustav Forsling specifically. They played together for a long time. They know how the other moves up the ice and back down. So that I'm not necessarily worried about. Question that I saw on the timeline as well is, does it give the Panthers leverage in contract talks for Aaron Ekblad, who's scheduled to be a UFA this summer? And honestly, if the Panthers go on a long run, this could be forgotten for them. And honestly, when number 5 also gets lifted up into the rafters, this will be forgotten as well for them. And if the Panthers do go home early for them, suspension or not, I think Bill Zito could pivot away to a different direction if the Panthers do go home early. So I don't think this necessarily creates leverage one way or the other for Aaron Ekblad or Bill Zito when it comes to contract talks this summer. So I don't think that's that is relevant when it comes to that, because you got to look at an entire body of work. And these guys get drug tested multiple times during the season, during multiple seasons. And Aaron Ekblad's been here for over a decade now, and we've seen the play. He at least the performance enhancing that he was taking. What was at least what we know from this positive test was recently here. If it would have gotten through another test in the past, then yeah, we have seen his performance over this big body of work for him that doesn't necessarily change things when it comes to the contract negotiations. And again, when you go into the signing a player into the future, it's going to be about what you're going to do for me in the future. It can't be necessarily what you've done in the past. If the Panthers win back-to-back Stanley Cups, then we might have a different conversation here as far as like a thank you for everything that he has done for the organization. But it's just going to depend how deep into the tournament that the Panthers do eventually reach when it comes to both their big UFAs coming up. If Sam Bennett shows out in the playoffs and they get deep and he averages a point per game, that puts the Panthers more in a harder situation. As far as Ekblad goes, that is going to be, you have, when you think of heart and soul of the franchise and you think of the length of time he's been here, that is going to be a little bit of a more emotional goodbye if it does in fact happen for them. So it's just really going to depend on that. But we're gonna transition over to segment number 3, where the Panthers will be meeting the Bruins tonight at the TD Garden, and Brad Marchand spoke with the South Florida media. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. And looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Segment number 3 here on this Tuesday, March 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So the Panthers face the Boston Bruins tonight from the TD Garden, 7 p.m. The Panthers have won 2 out of the 3 matchups, and even in the previous matchup, which was a nationally televised game, a matinee game, Panthers dominated the Bruins and found a way to still be on the losing end, thankfully getting a point with a goal at the last minute by Sam Reinhart. And then that was a game where 9 times out of 10, the Panthers feel good about their chances of winning a hockey game. But Brad Marchand spoke to the media, and here's the thing I mentioned on Locked On NHL with Gil Martin right before I left out of Florida, and that the Panthers have traded for a captain in 3 out of their last 4 trade deadlines: Claude Giroux, Kyle Okposo, and now Brad Marchand. So let's talk about why he ended up here. So Marchand met with the Bruins management to talk about his future. A 3-year deal was originally agreed upon, but there was a big difference in AAV for Marchand and management. And Marchand said that he was willing to even bend a bit, but the Bruins were not. So that, and we saw kind of like with the trends of how it was going to go based on what's happened in previous trades throughout the deadline. Trent Frederick, Brandon Carlo, Charlie Coyle, Justin Brazeau. So those are guys that you saw being shipped out as far as a shift in their franchise, and now there's a true shift when knowing that the captain, the guy who's been a guy who's been there for 16 years, although he wasn't a captain all those years, that that this was a true change in their direction. Whether Don Sweeney and Cam Neely are part of the brain trust that should be part of the rebuild, that remains to be seen as far as how they navigate them. But then they gave Brad Marchand a kind of a choice of where he'd like to go, and Florida was the place. And he said in the media availability that he was he kind of knew that he was being traded the day before that. So that's so still, if again, seeing the Brad Marchand sweaters at Pantherland, and then also even him in Panther gear it still feels so wrong, but it feels so right at the same time. So from suspensions, 2011 Cup run, 1,000 games in Boston, to perfection line, a future Hall of Famer, I would say. Who would have thought that he would have been here? Said that he put on some Panthers merch for the first time on FaceTime with a hat while he was on FaceTime with his kids. And he spoke about how the Panthers are the best position to win. But there's also the relationship factor as well, where Brad Marchand played with two members of the Panthers front office in Sean Thornton and Gregory Campbell in Boston. So still remaining in contact with them. Hockey is just such a tight-knit community, and you make friends for life, even if you haven't necessarily played them for a long period of time. And obviously those conversations off the ice have definitely helped Marchand. I did want to also mention, if you watch Saturday's game between the Panthers and the Buffalo Sabres, AJ Greer spoke about the situation of the Panthers trading for Brad Marchand. And Greer spoke about how Brad was the first player to call him when he was placed on waivers by the Bees, and they spoke on the phone for 15 minutes discussing just to keep grinding, keep believing in yourself, and you'll find yourself back in the show. And to think that AJ Greer has now given a 2-year deal, and now it's going to be part of the mix for these next 2 seasons for them. And Brad Marchand spoke about getting a spark with coming to South Florida, kind of similarly to when he won the Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins back in 2011. That thrilling series between them and the Vancouver Canucks, spoke about being rejuvenated here. And I spoke about rejuvenated with Nico Sturm and Vitek Vancek earlier. But speaking of, I challenge you to go look at the video that Brad Marchand had at the 2011 Cup parade of him rapping. It's a pretty epic video for if you want a little bit of entertainment, to see what kind of personality the Panthers will be getting in their locker room, even though we've seen a bit of his personality even on the ice in games. I mean, so with the long history. So Marchand was asked by David Dwork about having a front row seat, asked if it helped with the decision to come to South Florida. And Marchand also said, thanks for the reminder during the press conference. But he also spoke about it's a team to beat. It's a team that they just come in waves for them. Jessica Blaylock also asked him about stepping into a new room. Brad Marchand spoke about how he's been in different rooms, and as a culture in hockey, you don't take things personally, and that he's not here to step on any toes. He's still going to be who he is, but he still wants to contribute to a group. And hey, speaking of not taking things personally, he spoke about Sam Bennett and still calling him a pest, a scumbag, excuse me, for him. So thankfully that, again, the four nations and them playing on the same line, and him getting to know Sam Reinhart and knowing the situation that was coming up with his contract, that was a big opportunity, a recruiting opportunity for Sam Bennett. And hey, he also Brad Marchand also spoke about him being on the other side of things. So we said at the time in Game 3 of the second round how, hey, Brad Marchand can't complain because he's done this too. So the fact that Brad Marchand also spoke about it publicly, that he's been there, it's a little bit of a sense of maturity in his answer, honestly. So that you like to see that kind of response from him when talking about everything that happened the year before. spoke about how the team also plays the right way, built for the playoffs. He spoke about how teams are built for the regular season, but then some of them just built for the playoffs, which the Panthers in a position, not necessarily going to win the President's Trophy, going to have some bad stretches, but knowing when they're getting, when the grind is still starting to get there, and that that the playoffs are approaching, that they're amping up their game when necessary. And hey, that's going to be big for this Panthers road trip, as 6 games, a mix of playoff teams with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Columbus Blue Jackets in there, Washington. That this part of the season is going to be crucial for the Panthers here. And also, Brad Marchand spoke about how the team they have predators, and that you need to keep an eye out on guys the whole time. And honestly, listening to that, it truly feels that the Panthers really have a group of kind of like the Monstars in Space Jam, except the hockey version of it. Even if we don't necessarily get the dreamline that we've been talking about here on the internet, of Marchand, Bennett, and Tkachuk here. And also, he gave an update on the injury, said he was feeling better, spoke about how he wants to get to know the group off the ice. He's recovering and may be able to jump on the ice for morning skate later today, which will be at 11:30 for the Panthers at TD Garden. But he won't play regardless. But at least if we see him on the ice, we know it's a little bit, he's getting a little closer to at least playing for him. So he'll be on the trip for the Panthers here. He says it's going to be bittersweet to say goodbye, along with getting his stuff there. So that's going to be that's actually something that I'm going to be looking to for this game. Also, I want to give a clarification on the trade details, which we didn't get the whole thing necessarily on Friday when we did our crossover with Jack Bushman. It's a conditional second with the ability to become a first if the Panthers advance to at least the Eastern Conference Final and Brad Marchand plays over 50% of the game. So those are the 2 conditions. So honestly, the Panthers, if they make it that far for them, it's barely anything that they're giving up. So if it's a second round pick for the Panthers to Brad Marchand, if it ends up being a second, you basically give up nothing for an opportunity to give yourself a chance to win. But at the same time, you don't want to be eliminated prior to the second round when you know that this Panthers team has the best odds, according to FanDuel, at plus 550 to win the Stanley Cup again. So that would be, once again, falling short of expectations. But if they do fall short of expectations, at least the second round pick that they would give up is in the latter half of the round. So that's, you want it to be obviously the 2028, and also gives the Panthers opportunity in a future trade deadline for them to still trade a 2027 first if they do think next year that they still have a chance to compete for a Stanley Cup, which this is a team whose window is at least from now until 2030 there. So they are being very strategic with when they put the conditions on the pick. So 2027 second with a chance to become a 2028 first. So the Puckpedia can help you guys if you want to have a visualization of the Panthers draft capital coming up in the future, and how they're going to navigate things going forward, even if they do have to replace certain players. What kind, if you need to get a guy under contract to be the Aaron Ekblad replacement, what are you going to be giving up for him? So Puckpedia is the resource for you guys. So also, one more thing on Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand. He said, quote, "My jaw is looking forward to playing for Bennett." So just came across that in my notes. So I wanted to make sure that I got that out there for you guys. So just a little bit of comedy there from Brad Marchand. So Boston, they're in a position where they're out of the playoff picture. Doesn't look like that they are going to be they're going to be missing the playoffs for the first time in a while. And just looking at their lineup as we speak, with Charlie Coyle being traded, now the group up down the middle is Pavel Zacha, Casey Middlestat, and Elias Lindholm. Elias Lindholm was traded to the signed as a free agent to the Boston Bruins as a guy that was going to be the number 1 guy for them. But we've seen what happened in Calgary, where it was him on a line with Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, how he hasn't been able to replicate that since those two have been gone from his line for them. They did bring in Casey Middlestat, as mentioned just a few seconds ago, and that's a guy who fell out of favor with the Colorado Avalanche and replaced them with Charlie Coyle there. So the 1 through 3 for the top 9 for Colorado, how they've been able to shake up their roster from opening night till now. So it's once again impressive. David Pastrnak is still a weapon there, but really not when you think about the amount of players that they have shipped out from the deadline. This is a game that the Panthers should honestly feast on. We saw them feast on the Bruins even in their loss just last month, as we mentioned earlier. But Nikita Zadorov is that's a contract that's not going to age well, as we mentioned even in the preseason. Henry Jokiharju, which was a player that we highlighted that the Panthers could maybe be after. He was eventually traded to the Boston Bruins and spoke about how happy he was to get out of there, only for a 3rd round pick for them. So that is an opportunity for the Bruins to at least re-sign a guy while they're going through a little bit of a retool phase. But it's just a team whose life cycle of contending looks to be over for now. They still have a goaltender who, even though he missed a good part of training camp in Jeremy Swayman, I believe that he's going to have a bounce back season next year. It's just really how you're going to complement the offense. You needed a little bit of scoring. So if they're struggling to score, then the goals against for Boston is going to be even more amplified for them. So how are they going to conduct this new phase around David Pastrnak at forward and around their blue line with Charlie McAvoy being out after everything that happened to him for the four nations with the shoulder inflammation, and also Hampus Lindholm, who is out as well. So I'm expecting the Panthers to at least have 35 shots on goal tonight in Boston. So even without Matthew Tkachuk, even without Aaron Ekblad, I'm expecting the Panthers to truly put their foot on the throats of the Boston Bruins, grab the bull by the horn here for them and find a way to win the season series 3 out of 4 in this one. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. We don't know when we will be releasing the next episode of the show. Again, I'm out of state due to everything that has gone on with my grandmother. And if the family wants to go out to dinner tonight, I'm not going to say no to that. And I'll probably be watching it on demand if that does happen, and then bring you a podcast recapping that over the next few days. But we will get you at least a show before the Panthers matchup against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Thursday. So be on the lookout for that. And that's why I say subscribe to the podcast for you guys. So thank you so much, and I will see you on the next show.